Energy is the power that has changed human history. Things became faster and convenient. Our lives have changed every day. Beyond the energy evolution, making the transition to clean and safe energy is now our choice and destiny for future generations. Our efforts to reduce carbon emissions and to build a sustainable tomorrow have already begun. Starting with the Paris Agreement, we hold the P4G Summit. Replace fossil fuels with renewable energy, and companies participate in RE100. We are now facing the critical task, a significant transformation of energy systems to achieve carbon neutrality. What and how should the change be? And how different should it be? Now the discussion begins to answer the crucial question.
더 늦기 전에 지금 바로 시작합시다.
Welcome to the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Thematic Session on Energy. I'm Jiyeon Kim, the reporter and anchor for Arirang TV. I'll be your host for this session themed A Greener Planet with Innovative Energy Solutions. The session is streamed for viewers around the world. Please visit the P4G Seoul Summit website and select the language of your choice, English and Korean. The session venue is taking place here in Korea in adherence to the government's COVID-19 quarantine guidelines. Today's session will begin with welcoming remarks by South Korea's Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Seung-ok Moon, followed by keynote speeches. We'll then dive into the P4G Global Hub session and a panel discussion. Without further delay, let's start the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Thematic Session on Energy with welcoming remarks by Minister Seung-ok Moon.
안녕하십니까? 대한민국 산업통상자원부 장관 문승욱입니다. 오늘 2021 P4G 서울 정상회의 에너지 세션을 개최하게 되어 매우 뜻깊게 생각합니다. 전 세계에서 온라인을 통해 참석해 주신 산업계, 학계, 연구계, 시민사회계를 비롯한 국제기구 관계자 여러분들 진심으로 환영합니다. 특히 바쁘신 와중에도 기조연설을 수락해 주신 파티 비롤 IEA 사무총장님, 마이크 블룸버그 대표님, 김동관 하나솔루션 대표님, 허버트 아이벤스타이너 베스트 알핀의 대표님께도 감사드립니다. 그리고 P4G 허브 세션과 패널 토론에 참여해 주신 전 세계 각국의 에너지 전문가 여러분들께도 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 내외 귀빈 여러분, 전 세계가 코로나19로 인해 일상이 송두리째 바뀌고 심각한 경제 위기를 겪었던 지난해에도 기후변화는 멈추지 않았습니다. 세계 기상기구에 따르면 2020년은 기상관측 이래 2016년, 2019년과 더불어 가장 무더웠던 해였다고 합니다. 북극의 빙하는 무너져 내리고 있고 100년 만의 산불, 가뭄, 홍수 등 기후변화는 이제 지구촌 곳곳에서 일상이 되고 있습니다. 이에 따라 전 세계 주요국들은 기후 문제를 인류가 당면한 위기로 인식하고 2050 탄소 중립 선언에 동참하고 있습니다. 한국도 국제사회와 함께 기후변화에 적극 대응하기 위해 작년 10월 2050 탄소 중립 목표를 선언하였습니다. 또한 지난 4월 22일 개최된 기후정상회의에서 미국을 포함한 주요국 정상들은 이전보다 과감한 온실가스 감축 목표를 발표하였습니다. 한국도 온실가스 감축 목표를 상향 조정한 NDC를 금년 내로 발표할 것입니다. 또한 향후 해외 석탄 발전, 공적 금융 지원 중단 등 탄소 중립 실현을 위한 국가적 의지도 표명한 바 있습니다. 전 세계 기업들 또한 탄소 중립 시대에 발맞춰 혁신적인 변화를 준비하고 있습니다. SK, 한화큐셀, LG 에너지 솔루션 등 한국 기업들을 포함 전 세계 약 300여 개 기업들이 R200 캠페인에 참여하고 있습니다. 석유, 가스, 석탄 등 전통적인 화석 에너지 기업들도 재생에너지, 수소 등 저탄소 사업 투자 확대를 통해 새로운 미래를 위한 도전에 과감히 나서고 있습니다. 탄소 중립은 기존 산업이 축소라는 수동적, 부정적 인식으로는 그 목표를 달성하기 어렵습니다. 오히려 새로운 성장 동력과 일자리 창출이 기회라는 긍정적 미래지향적 관점에서 접근해야 합니다. 미국 정부는 기후변화 대응을 위해 올해 3월 대규모 청정에너지 및 인프라 투자를 포함한 일자리 창출 계획을 발표했습니다. 이유는 재작년 12월 그린딜 정책을 통해 친환경 정책을 신성장 동력으로 적극 육성해 나가고 있습니다. 한국도 지난해 7월 기존 화석연료 기반의 경제사회 시스템을 저탄소 구조로 전환하기 위하여 2025년까지 총 73.4조 원을 투자하는 그린 뉴딜 계획을 발표한 바 있습니다. 내외 귀빈 여러분, 이번 2021 P4G 서울 정상회의 주제는 포용적인 녹색 회복을 통한 탄소 중립 비전 실현입니다. 코로나19로 인한 경제 위기를 물, 에너지, 식량 농업, 도시, 순환경제 등의 분야에서 국제사회가 함께 극복해 나가고 미래 탄소 중립 목표를 위해 함께 노력해 나가자는 것입니다. 이 중 에너지가 전 세계 온실가스 배출의 약 3분의 2 이상을 차지하고 있습니다. 탄소 중립 달성을 위해서는 에너지 분야 시스템 전반에 걸친 혁신이 필요합니다. 우선 현재 화석연료 중심에서 청정에너지로 탈바꿈해야 합니다. 전기화도 급속도로 진행될 것으로 보입니다. 이 과정에서 전력망 인프라의 획기적 확충, 재생에너지 변동성 대응을 위한 스토리지 믹스와 P2G, P2H, V2G와 같은 섹터 커플링의 구현, 탄소 포집 저장 활용 기술 확보, 그린 수소 상용화 투자 확대, 에너지 수요 감축 및 효율 향상 등 에너지 분야의 무수한 난제들을 극복하고 해결해야 합니다. 또한 저탄소 에너지 시스템 구현을 위해 제도와 인프라도 혁신해야 합니다. 기존 화석연료 기반의 에너지 정책과 제도로는 기업들의 비즈니스 전환, 신산업 창출을 감당해내기 어렵습니다. 저탄소 자원이 보다 많이 에너지 시스템에 수용될 수 있도록 규제를 풀고 제도를 혁신해야 합니다. 이와 함께 녹색 분류체계, 뉴딜 펀드, 녹색 금융 등과 같은 녹색 인프라도 지속적으로 보강해야 합니다. 내외 귀빈 여러분, 탄소 중립은 우리가 반드시 가야 할 길이지만 아무도 가보지 않은 길입니다. 개별 기업, 개별 국가의 노력만으로는 절대 찾아갈 수 없습니다. 선진국과 개도국이 함께 탄소 중립으로 나아가기 위한 혁신적이고 창의적인 솔루션을 찾아야 합니다. 국제사회의 연대와 협력도 더욱 견고해져야 합니다. 화석연료 의존도가 높은 개도국의 경우 경제성장과 탄소 중립의 동시 달성은 더욱 어려운 도전이 될 것입니다. 청정에너지 중심의 성장이 될 수 있도록 기술협력, 투자 확대, 금융지원 등 선진국과 국제사회의 보다 적극적인 관심과 지원이 필요합니다. 개도국 지원을 위한 기후 재원을 지속 확대하고 P4G 파트너십 등 개도국 지원의 성공 모델도 공유, 확산해 나가야 할 것입니다. 한국도 책임있는 중견국가로서 선진국과 개도국 간의 브릿지 역할을 충실히 해나가겠습니다. 내외 귀빈 여러분, 지금 전 세계가 코로나19로 힘겨운 싸움을 하고 있습니다. 서로가 쉽게 만날 수 없는 극단적인 상황을 겪고 나서야 비로소 우리는 미래에 대한 준비가 얼마나 소중한지 깨달았습니다. 탄소 중립도 다르지 않습니다. 지금부터 미리 준비하고 대응하지 않으면 더 어려운 싸움이 될 것입니다. 미국의 경영학자 피터 드러커는 미래를 예측하는 가장 좋은 방법은 미래를 창조하는 것이라고 했습니다. 탄소 중립이라는 담대한 도전에 전 세계가 한마음으로 적극 소통하고 협력하여 새로운 미래를 함께 만들어 나갑시다. 오늘 에너지 세션이 탄소 중립 실현과 에너지 혁신의 해법을 모색하는 소중한 기회가 되기를 기대합니다. 그럼 지금부터 2021 P4G 서울 정상회의 에너지 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much, Minister Moon. Now I'd like to introduce 4 keynote speakers. The first keynote speech is presented by Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Valor.
Minister Moon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to commend Korea for the leadership it is demonstrating as host of the P4G Seoul Summit. I would like to speak to you today about what it will take for the world to get to net zero emissions by 2050. Clean technologies are becoming the technologies of choice in many areas, in many countries. Solar and wind are setting new records for deployment each year. 90% of the new electricity generation capacity is coming from renewables. Sales of electric cars are heading for new highs again this year. We have also seen over the last year a proliferation of net zero pledges from countries and companies around the world. The level of commitment to fight climate change has never been higher. But take a step back, and the picture becomes much less encouraging. There is still a huge gap between rhetoric and reality. This year, instead of sustainable recovery, we are heading for the second largest increase in global emissions in history, according to our numbers. To get to net zero emissions, we will require nothing short of a total transformation of our energy system. That is why we have just released a new roadmap, the most comprehensive and detailed attempt ever made to spell out what net zero 2050 means in practice. Let's make no mistake. The pathway is narrow but still achievable, and we have no time to spare. We are in a race to net zero, but this is not an ordinary race. Countries are starting in very different places, and some, especially in the advanced economies, will need to finish well before the others. This is not a race against each other, this is a race against time. The first priority is to make 2020s a decade of a massive clean energy expansion, focusing on the technologies like solar, wind, electric cars that are ready for the big time, plus a huge improvement in energy efficiency. But we also need to see a huge increase in innovation in order to have clean energy technologies such as advanced battery technologies, electrolyzers, CCS to be part of our energy system. Those technologies which are not mature today but under development. So we have twin challenges: make the most out of the existing technologies, and second, push the button of innovation in order to make them, the advanced technologies, new technologies, part of our global energy system. In our report, we came up with over 400 milestones for governments to take us through the journey to reach net zero by 2050 between now and the next 30 years. We hope that our report provides inspiration, a broad picture for governments around the world, as well as you, distinguished colleagues, a framework for your valuable discussions. Thank you very much for listening us.
Thank you very much, Executive Director Fatih Balor. We move on to our next speaker, former New York City Mayor and businessman, Michael Bloomberg.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for convening this summit. We're here to talk about an enormous challenge with implications for governments and businesses around the world: climate change. No single business, city, or nation can take on climate change alone. We have to work together to build effective partnerships and raise our ambitions. And while it's critical to set goals for 2030, we also need to make progress now. As UN Special Envoy, I've worked with leaders at every level to do that, particularly on coal-fired power plants. Burning coal remains the largest contributor to climate change, and it's a deadly threat to public health. At Bloomberg Philanthropies, we've worked with partners to retire more than 60% of all U.S. coal plants since 2011, and more than half of European plants since 2016. We've also expanded our work globally, including in South Korea. And I want to thank President Moon Jae-in for his recent pledge to end overseas financing for coal-fired power plants. And I believe that with even more commitments from countries and local partners, we can accelerate the global transition to a greener, healthier future. That includes phasing out coal in high-income nations by 2030 and the rest of the world by 2040. Together, we really can achieve it. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, former Mayor Bloomberg. The next speaker is by Chief Executive Officer of Strategy Division, Dong-Kwan Kim of Hanwha Solutions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dong-Kwan Kim, and I'm the CEO of Hanwha Solutions, the Total Energy Solutions division of Hanwha Group, a Fortune Global 500 company. It is an honor to be here today discussing challenges and new opportunities for the future of energy with such distinguished leaders of governments, industries, and civil societies. I can't wait to see how the partnerships forged at this year's summit will place the planet on track to building back better and greener. Hanwha Solutions shares your vision for a greener future and has made it its mission to provide the planet with smart, affordable, and sustainable energy. It is a mission that we take very seriously and one that has driven us to become one of the world's top solar energy companies for 10 years running. We believe that even the smallest advancements can lead to tremendous change. We've created technologies that are making energy production smarter and more sustainable, and we've done so by committing ourselves to making measurable progress against climate change, one innovation at a time. Allow me to give you an example. So much of the climate change discussion circles around what to do with existing energy infrastructure. A shift away from fossil fuels could result in billions of dollars worth of stranded assets. That is, assets and investments that are no longer viable due to changes resulting from climate policy. Coal-fired and other hydrocarbon-based power plants could fall into that category. As governments and energy firms explore ways to transition from coal to renewable alternatives, we're presented with a chance to create measurable progress on reducing humanity's carbon footprint. Pressure to move on from coal has led to increased interest in liquefied natural gas, or LNG-fired power plants, and it's easy to see why. They're viewed as a potential bridge to establishing a low-carbon economy, and they can help ensure stable power supplies by making up for the intermittent nature of renewable energy sources. Yet the problem is, LNG-fired power plants still emit carbon, although far less than the coal-fired facilities. So if our ultimate goal is to reduce emissions, what would be the best way to utilize them? Should they simply serve as a stopgap, or is there a way we could enhance them to open the door for even more measurable emissions progress? If nothing is done, LNG-fired power plants, too, will become stranded assets sooner or later, resulting in financial disaster for investors and creditors. Hydrogen to gas turbine technology, or H2GT, offer a potential solution to this problem. Our H2GT technology allows us to retrofit LNG-fired power plants, gas turbines, to run on up to 65% hydrogen fuel. Powering plants in this way would result in more than 30% fewer CO2 emissions and significantly fewer nitrogen oxide emissions. While those figures represent measurable progress in and of themselves, our R&D team is exploring ways to reduce emissions even further by advancing H2GT to reach 100% hydrogen power. Although H2GT represents just one piece of the decarbonization puzzle, its potential to revolutionize power plants exemplifies the type of tremendous change that I mentioned earlier. As we look to build back greener and cleaner, we'll need to prioritize tangible solutions like these to set the stage for more measurable progress down the line. Of course, when I say tangible solutions, I don't just mean hardware. Innovative software has and continues to play an important role in helping our industry tackle a wide range of challenges, especially in the solar sector. Imagine a city with hundreds of thousands of households and businesses, all with varying power consumption patterns that rely on distributed solar energy resources that are susceptible to weather changes and grid conditions. The questions are, how do we balance supply and demand in a reliable and affordable manner? And how do we do so efficiently in line with our goal of reducing carbon emissions? I believe the answers to those questions may lie in big data analysis and artificial intelligence. One of Hanwha Solutions' newest affiliates, energy storage solutions provider Growing Energy Labs Inc., or GELI for short, has developed AI-powered software that could potentially change the energy grid paradigm. GELI solutions are helping us make solar energy more ubiquitous and affordable, and can be used to create virtual power plants by combining the solar modules and energy storage systems of customers in various locations. The solutions optimize price and volume based on the amount of power customers produce and consume, and can alleviate pressure on grids by helping us identify the most efficient supply response to manage fluctuating demand. As time goes by, the solution's efficiency will help us utilize renewable energy more effectively, paving the way for us to make more measurable progress against climate change by reducing carbon emissions even further. At the beginning of my speech, I mentioned Hanwha Solutions' mission to offer the world access to smart, affordable, and sustainable energy. Technologies like H2GT and energy management software are bringing us closer to delivering on our mission, but they don't tell the full story of what that mission means to us. At Hanwha, we believe that tackling climate change is about more than innovations. It is also about making a difference in communities, which is why, as we've enhanced and expanded our green energy solutions, we've also sought out opportunities to use those solutions for the greater good. Each government and international organization in attendance today has the power to improve the lives of a community in need. The interesting thing about working for the greater good, however, is that the greater your numbers, the more good you can achieve. Through cross-sector collaborations, we can combine our capabilities to create lasting change in more communities. Reforestation projects like Hanwha Solar Forest demonstrate the true power of these collaborations. By teaming with social enterprise and with the support of local communities and government agencies, we've successfully planted over 500,000 trees in Korea and abroad, and have been recognized for our efforts by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Efforts like these would not be possible without cross-sector collaboration, whether it's making sustainable solutions more affordable, drafting green growth policies, or identifying the most urgent environmental matters at regional, national, and global levels. Each of us has a unique role to play, and each is equally important to the success of our collective cause. Climate change is as significant a challenge as humanity has ever faced, and rising to that challenge will require the combined efforts of all of us. Only by working together will we finally turn the measurable progress we've been making into transformative change. Thank you.
Anyone can help plant trees to combat the climate crisis. But in reality, the issue is more complex. To grow trees, we have been burning fossil fuels and emitting carbon dioxide, an irony not many realize. Solar forest. For the past decade, Hanwha has been planting about 500,000 trees around the world with solar energy without emitting carbon. Despite the global pandemic, Hanwha remains committed to the Global Forestation Initiative. Hanwha will continue to encourage people to grow their own plants wherever they are. Developing an application for planting virtual trees with solar energy and donating the virtual trees to become real trees. And now, with 15,000 trees in virtual spaces, we create carbon-neutral forests that will effectively reduce carbon emissions on Earth. A sustainable approach towards saving the Earth. Hanwha Solar Forest.
팬데믹 시대에 어플 하나로 이렇게 쉽게 참여를 할 수 있게 되어서 너무나 좋은 의미를 가진다고 생각을 하고요.
그 모든 일들이 정부가 다 할 수는 없습니다. 하나 그룹하고 큰 행사를 하게 돼서 뜻깊게 생각하는 바입니다.
For the future, Hanwha will continue to create sustainable solutions that deliver real change. Sustainable solution for Earth, for life. Hanwha.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Now for our final keynote speaker, I invite Herbert Ivensteiner, the CEO of Volsafine.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to take part in the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. We at voestalpine take climate protection very seriously and have a clear plan of how to achieve carbon neutrality as a company. voestalpine is an international steel and technology group employing around 50,000 people at 500 sites worldwide. We are specialized in high-quality steel products for the most demanding industries. Our own steel production in Austria accounts for around 1/3 of our total revenue. The other 2/3 are derived from processing steel into highly sophisticated end products. These include lightweight components for cars, highly resistant airplane parts, complete railway infrastructure systems, and high bay warehouses, to name a few. We at voestalpine are clearly committed to global climate goals and strive to be part of the solution. In fact, we have been an environmental pioneer in the steel industry for many years. Over the past decades, we have reduced air emissions and energy consumption to the possible minimum. But steel production at the current state of technology is still generating CO2. Only a radical technological transformation will allow us to significantly reduce our CO2 emissions further. Therefore, voestalpine has developed a step-by-step plan to decarbonize steel production over the coming years. With our project GreenTech Steel, we aim at gradually shifting from the coal-based blast furnace route to electricity-based production technology. This could reduce CO2 emissions by around a third by 2030. In absolute numbers, this will save 3 to 4 million tons of CO2 per year. Over the long term, we plan to increase the use of green electricity and green hydrogen. Our ultimate goal is to produce carbon neutral steel by 2050. With this goal in mind, we are intensively researching into so-called breakthrough technologies for steel production based on green hydrogen. To give you just 2 examples, at our headquarters in Austria, we are currently running the world's largest pilot plant for the production of green hydrogen in the steel industry. In another facility, we are testing the production of crude steel in a single process step using hydrogen plasma. However, this transformation scenario greatly depends on its economic feasibility. What we need in order to succeed is a policy framework that unites climate, energy, and economic concerns. Another important requirement is the availability of sufficient renewable energy at affordable prices. This is the only way we can apply tomorrow's technologies in a truly competitive manner. One thing is for sure, no matter how we produce steel in the future, it will be needed more than ever to realize a green future. There would be no wind turbine, no hydropower, no electric car, and no public transport without steel. It is one of the most commonly used materials worldwide and is indispensable in a sustainable society. Steel is much more durable than other materials and can be recycled with no loss of quality. Last but not least, I'm convinced that it will take a global effort to change our climate for the better and preserve a livable world for future generations. Every one of us is asked to make a contribution. We at voestalpine are prepared to do so. Thank you.
I would like to thank the 4 keynote speakers, Executive Director Fatih Valor, former Mayor Bloomberg, Chief Executive Officer Dong-Kwan Kim, and Mr. Ivan Steiner. Thank you for taking your time with us to share your insights. We appreciate it. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Ian De Cruz, the Global Director of P4G, to lead the P4G Global Hub discussion on energy. Global Director Cruz, we're looking forward to your session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kim, and welcome everybody to the P4G session on energy. I am Ian De Cruz, the Global Director for P4G. To achieve a net zero future for all, we must bring developing countries into the heart of this energy transition to build back better and greener. At P4G, over the last 3 years, we have found innovative finance and business models in developing countries that improve energy efficiency, scale renewable energy deployment, and bring heavy industry along this energy transition. Our country partners like Chile and Denmark are pursuing ambitious energy transition plans with large-scale projects in offshore wind farms and green hydrogen. There is an opportunity to share and scale these solutions in developing countries too. I would like to begin this session with a brief video that shares some of our most innovative market-based solutions we are scaling to deliver an energy transition in developing countries.
789 million people in the world lack access to electricity. P4G is accelerating breakthrough scalable solutions and a low-carbon transition that leaves no one behind. P4G's energy transition theme is providing tangible solutions for decarbonization, including in e-mobility, energy efficiency, and the emerging green hydrogen economy. P4G partnership Energize Africa is implementing innovative crowdfunding solutions to improve renewable energy access. The Getting to Zero Coalition partnership is decarbonizing shipping by catalyzing commitments for investment in commercially viable zero-emissions vessels by 2030.
The Africa Greenco Partnership serves as a creditworthy renewable energy buyer and seller that reduces the risk of investing in renewable energy projects in Zambia and subsequently the rest of the region. Greenco uses the Southern African Power Pool's competitive markets to mitigate long-term price and demand risk.
A low-cost, resilient and zero-carbon energy system is possible, but it requires collaborative solutions now. The emerging solutions accelerated at the P4G summit will be proof points in the COP26 action agenda to accelerate a more equitable energy transition and to win the race to zero.
P4G is a global platform delivering transformative impact with a pipeline of more than 50 partnerships and a global ecosystem spanning 12 country partners, 5 organizational partners, and more than 240 business and civil society partners. Join us in pioneering green partnerships and investing in impact.
Thank you for that. I would now have the pleasure to introduce our 3 P4G champions leading energy transition globally, with Mads Nipper, CEO of Ørsted, sharing their story of transformation from an oil and gas company into a renewable energy company. Anna Hajuka, CEO of Africa Greenco, a P4G partnership bringing private sector investment in renewable energy into Southern Africa. And Dan Jørgensen, Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities in Denmark, sharing the Danish approach of industry and government working together on the ambitious climate change targets and energy transition. I'd like to pass it over to you, Mads, to share some of your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you very much for both having this event, but also for inviting me on behalf of Ørsted to tell about our story. I'll do it as brief as I possibly can, even though there's stuff for hours here. So where did we come from around 10 years ago? Where we came from being a sort of a mid-sized, sort of very fossil fuel intensive utility. And as a matter of fact, we had 85% of our energy being generated from fossil fuels. And we clearly saw that's not sustainable. I mean, this is not going to be a future-proof model, nor can we afford, nor should we allow ourselves to take that forward due to sort of what we wanted to do in terms of positive contributions. So we set ourselves 2 visionary targets at the time. We said we want to, by 2040, to have 85% of our generation being from renewables, so turning it around from 85% fossil fuel to 85% renewables. And we also said, because offshore wind was our major strategic bet, we will take it upon us to prove that offshore wind power prices can go below 100 euro per megawatt hour before 2020. Pretty much nobody believed that any of those were possible at the time. But because we did have the courage and the rigor and the sort of the wholeheartedness to really stand behind that and put effort and work into it, what happened was that 4 years ahead of time, so by 2016, we actually got the power price for offshore wind below 100 euro. So 4 years ahead of time was something nobody thought was possible. And at the same time, now in 2021, we are not at 85%, we are at 90% of total generation being from renewables. So 20 years ahead of time. So how is that possible? Well, both because we chose, despite not having a business case nor the certainty around it that it would be possible, we chose to do it wholeheartedly, and we got the partnership from governments, not least Denmark, UK, and Netherlands, who gave the policies that would actually make it certain, and we had then the safety to make long-term investments. So that was possible, and now we are, in less than 10 years, making a full transformation into a fully renewable company. Next frontiers are going to be 100% renewable generation in 2025, and completely carbon neutral by 2040, including our supply chain. What can organizations do? Well, we should all be catalysts for change, but none of us can do it alone. So leveraging organizations like P4G, engaging in something like the green hydrogen catapult, those are examples where we can forge public-private partnerships and accelerate a transformation that we so also dearly need. So thank you very much for listening to this very brief story. I invite everybody to also ask more questions because we'd be happy to share a richer story. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Mads. An inspiring example for all corporates around the world looking to make that energy transition with very practical examples. Over to you now, Anna, a homegrown P4G champion, to talk about your energy transition you're leading in Southern Africa.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you, and thank you for the opportunity and for all your support. We wanted to take you a little bit on a journey of electrification in sub-Saharan Africa. The potential, as we all know, is staggering, but we cannot power today our economies with potential. We need to turn that potential into reality. For that, we need new innovative business models that deliver true systemic and sustainable change and that operate on the ground. Africa Green Co is one such business model, which through the invaluable support of the P4G and under the leadership of the government of Zambia, the Southern African Development Community, and the Southern African Power Pool, is bringing transformational changes on the ground on a national and regional basis. Let me start with the journey and the problem. Firstly, traditional ODA thinking is wrong. We need to better reflect the context on the ground and work in partnership with those who know best, i.e. the local actors themselves, so to align with their development priorities. Currently, to develop energy projects in sub-Saharan Africa, financial support from the international development community is provided largely on a project-by-project basis through a combination of offshore provision of grants, debt finance, and guarantees, through which to cover utility and sovereign credit risk. This approach is piecemeal and relies on heavily indebted governments assuming very large fiscal liabilities to backstop the obligations of their utilities. It's a sticking plaster and not a cure. At Africa Green Co, in partnership with the P4G, Denmark's IFU, and PIG's IFRICA Africa, we are working on dismantling this paradigm. Our vision is to lead innovation and sustainably transform renewable energy markets in Africa. How do we do that? By acting as a creditworthy renewable energy buyer and seller in the market. We reduce the risk of investing in renewable energy projects in Zambia and subsequently other countries in the region, whilst compensating national utilities for the use of their transmission and distribution systems and for their services, such as balancing of intermittency, for example. This is required for optimum and sustainable integration of renewable generation. Our model is financially sustainable and has replicability and scale at heart. Greenco uses the Southern African Power Pool's competitive markets to mitigate long-term price risk and demand risk. Why do we do that? Because the regional power pools provide an alternative route to market, which will break the restrictions imposed by national sovereign ceilings. We aim to mobilize billions of US dollars by 2030 to build more than 1.5 gigawatts of renewable energy, powering nearly 6 million homes and creating 4,000 jobs. Green is currently operational in Zambia, will be operational in Namibia in Q3 this year, and is expanding its operations to other countries in the region, such as South Africa and the DRC. Together with the P4G, we believe in systems change that bring benefits to all actors in the energy space in Africa. We are proudly the pioneers in this journey, and we call on all partners to come and join us. And the P4G, if you truly want to deliver systemic change on the ground. Thank you very much to everyone and for this opportunity, and thank you to the P4G family.
Thank you, Anna. Another, really inspiring, transformative example of change and energy transition. And to our final keynote speaker, Mr. Jørgensen from Denmark, to share the inspiring story of partnership between industry and climate working together on energy. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you. And thank you to the Republic of Korea for hosting the P4G Summit 2021. Have any of you ever wondered why wind turbines always turn clockwise? Well, it's actually a sweet little story. In the late 1970s, an independent engineer in Denmark called Erik was about to create a blade model which would later become the global standard. Before he could get started, he had to make a major decision. Should the rotor turn clockwise or counterclockwise? The established Danish tradition prescribed counterclockwise rotation. But Erik's wife, called Tove, a true individualist, suggested otherwise one morning at the kitchen table. She wanted Erik to show his independence too. So, when wind turbines all across the planet all turn clockwise, it's because Erik listened to his wife. In Denmark, we have a long history of listening to each other, cooperating and finding solutions together. This is part of the reason why we've come so far in the green transition. Since the oil crisis in the 1970s, the Danish government has invested heavily in the development of wind power, funded research and continuously worked to improve the framework conditions for companies in the industry. Today, Denmark has a world-leading wind industry. For instance, Ørsted, our largest energy company, what began as an oil and gas company decades ago now ranks as the world's most sustainable energy company. The success of Ørsted is a story of how a government and an energy company work together to create the right conditions for a new renewable energy adventure to take off. By sharing our experience in a new report titled From Black to Green, a Danish sustainable energy growth story, we hope to inspire our international partners to embark on a similar collaborative journey. There is no doubt that close cooperation with the entire business community is crucial to the green transition. This is why in Denmark we've established 13 climate partnerships with the business community, covering all parts of our private sector. The purpose is to strengthen the dialogue between the government, the business community and trade unions on opportunities and barriers in our country's green transition. So far, it has been a great success. The climate partnerships have presented more than 400 recommendations for the green transition. That is impressive and important. We've already included many of them in political climate agreements and proposals, and we will continue to do so. Limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius will not be easy. We must find new ways to catalyze investments, accelerate innovation and create successful public-private partnerships. At the same time, we must do this in the most fair and inclusive way. It needs to be a people-centered transition. This is exactly what the P4G is all about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Minister Jørgensen, and to our wonderful keynote speakers. You have provided very tangible examples of energy transformation, of the speed and scale we need in this decade of action. We now pass over to our panel discussion to really talk about some of the specific solutions emerging in developing countries. And to do that, we now have three keynote speakers here to talk about this. Mr. Saurabh Kumar, the Executive Vice Chairperson of EESL, driving an innovative commercial approach to energy efficiency and demand management in India, and looking to replicate this in other developing countries. Lisa Ashford, CEO and Director of ETHEX, bringing retail investors in UK to invest directly in small, medium enterprises and entrepreneurs in Africa, providing access to clean energy. And Max Correa Achora, Head of the Fuels and New Energies Division in Chile, Ministry of Energy, outlining Chile's vision to be a leading producer of green hydrogen energy. So the first question to the panel, what are innovative models you are working on that unlock investment to scale access to energy efficiency investment in renewable energy generation? Maybe Lisa, you could answer that question in terms of the perspective of what you're doing in Energize Africa.
Thank you, Ian, and pleasure to be here today. So Energize Africa is providing flexible and affordable capital to solar businesses across sub-Saharan Africa that's allowing them to scale their businesses and in turn is scaling access to clean energy for millions of people across sub-Saharan Africa. We're the missing link that is not being addressed by some of the larger financial institutions, and we're using innovative solutions to try and bridge this gap. So far, we're operating in 15 African countries with over $31 million invested by the crowd. And our mission is to mobilize $1 billion into this sector, allowing more than 50 million people to get access to clean and affordable energy. Through P4G's funding and networks, it's put us firmly on the map, allowing us to scale and innovate early on in our growth pattern. We have a huge financing gap to meet, the SDGs, and retail finance blended with institutional money can help bridge this gap. And we need to mobilize everyone to bring them along on this journey in order to meet the SDGs. We know that there's demand from individuals to take action on climate change and to help meet the SDG targets. If we can do that in a measured and smart way, the potential is enormous. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Lisa, for that very tangible example of transformation with direct investment into our African countries to build back better and greener, especially in the context of the pandemic. So we now have Saurabh to join us. It'd be great to hear, Saurabh, your innovative model in India, looking at energy services companies and how you're looking to take a commercial approach there and replicating that in other developing countries. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Ian. It's a great pleasure to be part of this summit. We have been in India doing things which are at scale, slightly different. It is a bit innovative. And very quickly, what we have been able to achieve over time is our most famous lighting market, which was the Ujala program, where in the last 4-5 years, we have been able to replace more than 370 million incandescent bulbs and CFLs. And we were able to achieve without any subsidy from anyone, simply by aggregating, creating business models which were good. Similarly, now we are at the cusp of energy transition. Some people say transitions. I would like to call them energy transformation. It is becoming democratic. The energy services needs are becoming very different. And in this country, and your video very rightly said, a large population is without access to commercial energy. And India is one of them which do have this problem completely. So we have come out with a very innovative model that we call convergence. And I'll very quickly try and explain what that model is and how it is something that can be scaled up, replicated anywhere else in the world. Here, what we are doing in a state, in a rural areas, we are putting together very small, between 0.5 megawatt and 2 megawatt of solar installations and feeding them directly to the demand on the rural side. Side by side, we are also putting together small battery storage units, which are able to store energy from solar and use it for multiple purposes in the villages. For example, public lighting. Most parts of rural India do not have public lighting, and we have estimated that the total requirement of public lighting in villages is upwards of about 50 million in the country. So the public lighting is one, and you can add many more things like induction cook stoves. The whole idea of this thing is to put together all these value stacks into a power purchase agreement and deliver it to the utility, to the benefit of the rural community. And therefore, it's a model which is renewables, which is sustainable, and we're hoping to build a sustainable future for our villages.
Thank you, Saurabh. A very powerful example of aggregation, scaling, a commercial approach, and also how we can bring cross learnings from India to other countries, whether it's India, Indonesia, Kenya, and our other partner countries. Thank you for that, Saurabh. So those are two very tangible examples of what is being done now for transformation. And Max is at the heart in Chile of an energy transformation at a country level as you look to a future industry and how we can actually bring heavy industry. Over to you, Max.
Thank you very much, Ian, for having us. First, I'm glad to say that the Chilean energy sector has maintained its investment momentum throughout the pandemic. This year, we have near $1 near 150 new renewable energy projects under construction, which together accumulates around 6 gigawatts of capacity, which accounts for all solar and wind projects built in the past 10 years combined. It's pretty amazing how the energy transition is accelerated. And well, as you may know, Chile, as many other countries, throughout our updated NDC, we have committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. And our plan is ambitious, but in essence, it is simple. First, we will clean our electricity generation capacity by phasing out coal and increasing the amount of renewable energy. Our aim is to achieve 70% of renewable generation before 2030. Second, we will prompt investments in transmission and storage, but network flexibility and security. And third, we will replace fossil fuels with electricity across different sectors of the economy: mining, industry, transportations, and buildings. But we know that direct electricity consumption will not be enough. We need lots of energy and efficiency. And also, we have developed a comprehensive national strategy to develop green hydrogen with the national goals of having 5 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity under development by 2025. Second, producing the cheapest green hydrogen on the planet by 2030 at the lowest competitive cost of $1.5 per kilo. And that was last year. Our latest projections say that we're reaching near $1 per kilo of hydrogen, turning hydrogen very competitive to the alternative fossil fuels. And third, being among the three top leading exporters of green hydrogen and derivatives by 2004. And a key part of that is working with the private sector. We need to identify initial projects to develop green hydrogen. So we announced a call for projects that can become operational before the end of 2025. And we have allocated $50 million to support these projects in grant, which is pretty novel for the Chilean economy. And finally, I'm very pleased to share that when we launched the strategy last November, we counted like 20 projects in the country. And now we are already seeing that we have doubled that number. We have like 40 projects to produce green or consume green hydrogen and derivatives in the country. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Max. And another theme and example of bold leadership, courageous vision, but really crowding in the kind of investment solutions needed. So the final question to the panel is really, how can initiatives like P4G help scale your ambition and bring that energy transformation? So in the same order, Saurabh, if we could hear your views.
Thanks, Ian. I think P4G gives a very powerful platform because it includes partners which are not just government, they are partners which are industry as well. And as I said, the issues that we are dealing with here is something that are common in many, many parts of the world. And P4G, with the kind of credibility, with the kind of network that exists in various countries, I think a partnership between country players like ours and P4G would only help in not just disseminating knowledge, but also sharing experiences. And also, if the need arises, actual on-the-ground implementation for similar benefits that we have. And we are very proud to say that P4G is supporting us in several parts of this world in Asia, and we look forward to much more as far as P4G is concerned.
Thank you, Saurabh. Excellent. Lisa.
Well, as I mentioned, we see Energize Africa as a real platform for enormous growth, and it's a huge opportunity. We see that we could develop beyond Africa into many other countries and regions. And apart from our name of Energize Africa, there is potentially nothing to hold us back. And we will be addressing that in due course to allow us to be able to develop in other sectors and across other regions. We're already trialing projects that we're funding for India, and we look to develop further across Asia and other countries. Beyond that as well, in terms of sectors, we're moving beyond solar. We started with domestic solar. We've soon incorporated commercial and industrial solar and productive use of solar. Beyond that, we're starting to trial agri-tech funding, and we could potentially move into funding organizations that are scaling up in terms of clean mobility, water, and beyond. So using innovative approaches will allow us to scale up what we're doing, speed up what we're doing, allow us to help different sized organizations in a way that's effective and efficient. Also, we're looking at market development where there are areas that need further knowledge-based work before we can open them up for scaling up energy access on a distributed basis. So work in Ethiopia, for example, on market development that we've been partnering with P4G on. Collaboration is absolutely key, and it's been mentioned before, and I think P4G is helping us to access players that are not necessarily traditionally active in this space. So apart from the support that we have from P4G, UK Aid and Good Energies Foundation, we're looking to DFIs and other more traditional financial institutions to partner with us to allow us to scale and allow us to open up these new markets. And by using finance in this very catalytic way, we hope that we can really be on the front sharp edge of innovation. Solutions like Energize Africa potentially are limitless in their growth, and they're highly replicable around the world. I think we're proof that this can be done, and we would like to see Energize Africa scale much further. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Lisa. And then over to you, Max.
Yes, we believe that platforms like P4G are necessary to pursue a global green hydrogen strategy. We need to partner and collaborate with countries interested in embarking in this clean and novel energy carrier. And in this area, where we can benefit is where we can benefit from other P4G's national platforms and networks to connect with potential off-takers, technology providers, and project developers. We are here in Chile developing what we call a green hydrogen diplomacy to position the country as a source of clean fuels and energy carriers. For example, we have an energy partnership with Germany and have already signed MOUs with Singapore and the Port of Rotterdam to carry out joint work on setting up international supply chains of green hydrogen and derivatives. And we seek to replicate this bilateral cooperation with other target markets around the globe as well. An investment will also be critical. Our carbon neutrality goals implies investment opportunities for the country between 27 billion to 48 billion by the year 2050. In a recent request for information, we received 18 expressions of interest in green hydrogen initiatives requiring investments in excess of 12 billion. And also we will need multilateral collaboration. We are working with the World Bank and the Clean Investment Fund to design appropriate financial mechanisms such as Green Hydrogen Fund. P4G, with its global network of public and private leaders and a focus on innovative market-based solutions, is the type of initiative that's needed to help countries transition to clean energy. Not just for the power sector, but for the hard-to-abate sector as well. So we're looking forward to working with P4G on the energy transition and clean hydrogen area as an example.
Thank you so much, Max. It's a really good example of really scaling and replication from green diplomacy to what you're doing in Chile to Lisa's example of replicating and scaling this model in other countries and regions, but also to other sectors. I might just quickly take the liberty to get Mads Nipper to also share this idea of green hydrogen and maybe your views of where P4G can help Mads, building on what Max just said.
No, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that, Ian. And I think, I mean, like everybody else, we clearly need green hydrogen to decarbonize the hard to abate sectors. That's without a doubt. And it's difficult. And I think what P4G can do is to share experiences and really advocate for the right policy to scale, because the technologies are there. I mean, electrolyzer technology is there. So what we really need is sufficiently cheap and sufficient quantities of renewable energy. And what's needed for that is to make the necessary seabed or land available, to ensure that the developers have the right policy, safety or security to make the long-term investments. And then also to ensure that we help governments around the world to understand this is not just a matter of giving investment support. It's about, for a number of years, to create the necessary production support to make it competitive versus the alternatives, the black alternatives, so to speak. And this is something which is difficult. And all around the world, if we can share those best practice experiences, and if we can also help leapfrog in the developing markets, that would be a fantastic accelerator, apart from what P4G already does so well, namely to forge partnerships between public and private entities.
Thank you so much, Mads. And I think a personal ambition for me is to see how we can help create that green hydrogen network using our wonderful countries, partners, and corporates in P4G. So I have great pleasure now to wrap this up with a good friend and partner organization in World Economic Forum, and Dominic Warry, our Managing Director of the World Economic Forum, to really share your views of this session, how we're looking to partner together in scaling the energy transformation for the world. Over to you, Dominic.
Thank you very much, Ian. It's a delight, privilege, and pleasure to be here, and also to be a partner of P4G, which is such an excellent initiative with all of the governments and other institutions involved. It's just been brilliant to listen to the conversation, whether it's from Ørsted or Energize Africa or Africa Green Co, or the ministries from Denmark and Chile, or Energy Efficiency Services Limited from India. And all of these innovations at different scales and working in different ways to leverage finance and technology and crack that nut of how to get to scale quickly, given the 2030 timeframe that we're all working toward. I'm reminded, Ian, of that science fiction author, William Gibson. He had a great quote once. He said, "The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed." And it feels a little bit like that. We have such fantastic and interesting innovations taking shape across India, across Africa, and in Europe as well that we heard. And that absolutely illustrates the role and the potential for P4G to help kind of link together some of these examples, share knowledge, best practice, unlock hidden capacity, transmit those examples, dare I say, from, shall I say, south to north, because there's some great examples going on here of innovation in emerging economies, which I feel that Europe or the US or others could really learn from. Partnership isn't just one-way traffic, there are two ways to this. And then with the support of the World Economic Forum as a partner and collaborator in P4G to help use our networks and partnerships and opportunities and relationships with governments and investors to get to scale that we need. So it's really, really exciting to hear what we have on the table from this panel. And I would urge each of the panelists, and the way that you skillfully moderated the discussion, Ian, to actually connect with each other. I mean, that's what we heard as well from the conversation, because from the public sector side, you know, we heard about the potential to get to scale and some of the policy unlocks. From the innovator side, we heard about some of the ability to draw in finance and blend, put those two together, and we start to realize the dream, the vision, and the key objectives, not only for P4G, but for where we all need to be in the world by 2030. So congratulations, everyone who was involved in this discussion. It's very exciting, and it gives us a lot of hope, I think, to be pragmatically optimistic about how we can scale, innovate, and partner our way through what seems to be a challenge and into a universe of immense opportunity. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you for those inspiring words, Dominic. This is truly the P4G family in action. And to all of you in the global audience, These are the pioneers, leaders in government, business, civil society working together to really scale energy transformation for the world, where developing countries are at the heart of building back better and greener in this decade of action. Thank you all. Okay, so I just want to thank everyone on the session. It was a great example of P4G in action, very, very tangible solutions. And of course, as Dominique said so well and eloquently at the end, we really want to use this as a little partnership in itself of all of you on this call to really keep scaling in the future. But on behalf of the P4G family, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for a great session. And now we'll move on to our next panel discussion. For this panel discussion, we invite 7 panelists. But first, let me introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. Hee-Jip Kim. He is the current CEO of IDEA, as well as visiting professor of Seoul National University Graduate School of Engineering Practice. He's also the former chief managing director of Accenture, Korean and Asian energy industry. Now I'll hand over the floor to you, Mr. Kim.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for attending today's session. This is Hee-Jip Kim. I'm the moderator of today's panel discussion. It's an honor to host this panel discussion with highly respectable global leaders. Let me briefly introduce myself. I used to work for Accenture for 26 years and leading energy industry sector for Asia. And now I'm teaching energy transformation, the lovely subject at Seoul National University. It's an honor for me to have this panel, and I believe this is a very important topic, as you all agree. As the minister says before, energy industry is generating about 2/3 of greenhouse gas in the world. So it is very important for us to find out the solutions in the energy sector in this topic. Today's objective is to brainstorm on our strategy to achieve global carbon neutrality. And we have highly respectable 7 speakers, and I'll introduce each speaker, and I will ask each speaker to introduce themselves shortly. First, Stéphane Michel, would you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stéphane Michel. I'm heading the gas, renewable, and power business line of Total, the oil and gas energy company, which is becoming a broad energy company, as I will explain.
Thank you. And Mr. Andrew Marsh?
I'm Andy Morris. I'm the CEO of Plug Power. Plug Power is located in upstate New York, and it's a pleasure to be here in Korea today.
Nice to meet you. Mr. Sam Kimmins?
Hi, my name's Sam Kimmins. I'm the head of RE100 with the Climate Group. RE100 brings together 311 of the world's largest corporates, all committed to using 100% renewable electricity. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Yosuke Kiminami-san?
Hi, 안녕하세요. Thank you, Mr. Kim. This is Yosuke Kiminami, founding CEO of Renova, a renewable energy IPP company active in Asia. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. And Thomas Anker Christensen?
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Copenhagen. I'm the climate ambassador of Denmark. My role is to take the Danish 70% reduction target for 2030 and translate that into global action.
Thank you. And Hong Patterson.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Hong Patterson. I'm the CFO and the Director for Support Services for the Green Climate Fund. Founded and established under the UNFCCC, the Green Climate Fund is the world's largest climate-focused fund, helping developing countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and enhance their ability to respond to climate change in line with the Paris Agreement.
Thank you. And Sung Eun-jang.
Hello everyone, this is Jang Sung-eun, the founder of YOK. We are providing education opportunities to children in Africa by distributing energy in rural area. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Our panel discussion will be composed of 3 themes. First, we'll talk about innovation and strategies of energy companies, the traditional ones, and also new energy companies first. And then we'll talk about the policy, government policy on global carbon neutrality. And after that, we'll talk about partnership, collaboration, cooperation, global cooperation, and also inclusive green growth together. So those are 3 themes. Let's begin our panel discussions. Let's hear from our speakers. Stéphane Michel, would you please start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the invitation and choosing the term survival and innovation strategy for traditional energy company. I guess I'm the representative in this panel of what is behind me and the way you see me, a dinosaur. A dinosaur whose only future is to disappear because they are not relevant because of the climate change challenge. And I just hope that in 5 minutes I will be able to convince you that you are wrong and that actually what I am is what is behind me, something broad and diverse. Why are we legitimate? Our role is not to sell oil and gas. It has never been to sell oil and gas. Our role is to sell energy to the planet and provide something that is key for life. The challenge we all have is to be able to do that while at the same time we take care of the climate change and we are able to reconcile the need for energy and respecting sustainable development of the planet. And that's why Total has decided to transform itself and to turn into a broad energy company and even to change its name from Total to Total Energies. With a clear commitment with society to achieve carbon neutrality in 2050, but more importantly, to take some concrete steps to decrease our scope 1 and scope 2 emission clearly as of 25 and 2030, with a 40% decrease of our emission versus 2015. And then on scope 3, again with society, because we are not alone to change things, to try to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. How are we going to do that? There are 4 key pillars for us. The first one is clearly to build an electric arm to our company, both on renewable aspect, and we have embarked in a journey in the last 5 years where we are building solar and wind energy, reaching 7 gigawatt as I speak, with a pipe to reach 25 gigawatt by 2025 in Europe, in the US, in India, in Asia, and trying to reach 100 gigawatt by 2030. And we are well on stream to do that, investing more than 2 billion per year in that sector, and confident we will deliver that. And we believe that the global reach and our ability to manage big projects that we have developed in the oil and gas will help us to achieve that and to become one of the top 5 renewable company in the world. So that's one. Second, developing as well our presence in the electricity market down to the customer. And we are honored to be serving today more than 7 million customers in Europe and going to 13 million direct customers in gas and electricity by 2030. So renewable distribution of electricity and gas. Third axis is promoting LNG. We are convinced that in the coming 20 years, gas will be key for many countries to ensure a transition in the way they produce power, and that gas should, as much as possible, replace coal as a way to produce power. At the same time, we are developing renewable energy, but you have to take care of the intermittence of what can be produced, and we still believe that gas should be part of the solution. With that, that means that our mix of energy is going to evolve, where it's roughly it's around 50% today of oil and 50% of gas, and it should be with time 30% with oil, 5% with biofuel, 50% with gas, and at least 50% of green electricity. Obviously, the last part of that to reach carbon neutrality will be our ability to offset carbon emission, Scope 1 and 2. And to do that, we have started as well to develop a business of CCUS, so carbon capture and storage. That's one aspect with several projects in Europe, Norway, Holland. That's one. And second, to develop as well what we call natural-based solution, being now a 100 million per year investor on forest, either to make new plantation or to maintain existing one. And with all that, we have a global strategy that is coherent, that allows us, that put us on track to deliver our commitment to the neutral carbon objective, but at the same time to be able to provide the energy that the world is needed. And if I talk in old terms of dinosaur terms, that would represent going from 3 million barrels to 3.5 million barrels. But I guess we will have to change and talk in petajoule tomorrow or gigawatt. All that is possible, and at the same time, we are still going to produce and sell a bit of oil by 2050, because it will be required by part of the planet that will be come a bit later on their transition. And to do that, you have to focus your whole portfolio as well on the oil that is shipped to produce, and that's why we have completely rebalanced our portfolio in the last year, in the last 10 years, focusing on the places where it's shipped to produce, and as well, it necessitates less CO2, which means basically exiting Canada, for example, and the shale in Canada, and focusing on cheap oil in Middle East. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing wonderful views you have on your company, Total. Very interesting. Let me ask some questions here. First, what is the role of innovation in terms of energy transformation for your company? How important the innovation is? Would you please explain to us?
Yeah, innovation is key. It's key because it's innovation which has allowed to lower cost on renewable energy. And if we had not cut costs by 10 on solar, we wouldn't be talking of what we are talking today. That's one. innovation will be key for hydrogen and to make hydrogen a reality tomorrow. It's going to continue to be key to optimize all the power system and to be able to take into account how to manage the intermittency of renewable energy. We are investing 1 billion on the battery for electric vehicle, as we are as well shareholder of Saft. And innovation here is absolutely key to make that transition. So it's absolutely exciting because I believe that has been not been for a while a period of history where the transformation is so huge and innovation is so key in what's going to happen in the energy sector. But we should not forget that it's R&D with what we call low TRL, but one of the challenges as well is to industrialize all that and put it at scale. And that's where I think we need to manage a global ecosystem with startups, with smaller companies, perhaps more agile than we could be, but as well big players that can make a difference because you need size and scale. And the big question for us is as well to be able to entertain that ecosystem and partnership with people with great ideas and more agile than we could be, but unfortunately with less financial means, and it's by the cooperation that we will make it happen.
Thank you. I think if I heard right, I think you mentioned about carbon sinks. Can you provide some examples on carbon sinks?
Yeah, on carbon sinks, you have two types. You have on one side using depleted gas field, for example, in the North Sea or existing aquifer where you can store carbon. And I would say it's clearly the type of business we are used to because it's instead of taking the gas outside of the reservoir, you have to put it back. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's pipe, compression, transport. So we know how to do that. And as I say, we have the first big project in Europe, in Norway, called Northern Light, to prove that it can work at scale and on a commercial basis. So that's one part. And the second part is what you see on the screen on my right, which is forest, and investing clearly in preserving forest or in planting new trees. And we are currently investing 100 million per year. We just closed several deals in Gabon, in Congo, in Peru. What is important is to do it in collaboration with a local stakeholder. Because if you don't ensure that they make a living for what you are doing, it's not sustainable. So you need to check the best standard when you are doing that. But we are sure that it will allow us to get carbon ton at let's say $10 per barrel, $10 per ton, which is our objective.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It must be a great challenge for traditional oil and gas company to make the energy transformation. Thank you.
Yes,
let's move
but
on.
it's very exciting as well, and we are sure that we won't end up like Kodak, for example, being judged irrelevant to the energy market. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to the second speaker. Mr. Andrew Marsh, would you please?
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. As I mentioned, I'm the CEO of Plug Power, and Plug Power created the first commercial market for fuel cells. And not the sexiest market in the world. We put fuel cells in the forklift trucks, but we've actually deployed over 40,000 units to date with people like Amazon and Walmart. And during the COVID crisis, fuel cell powered forklift truck actually delivered more than 25% of food that went on folks' table. But to do this, we needed to develop a turnkey solution. We've actually built over 120 hydrogen stations, which will reach 175 by the end of this year. We also are the largest user of liquid hydrogen in the world, using over 40 tons a day. That's equivalent to 80,000 gallons of gasoline. Company also, when you look at it, has developed some unique technologies. We are, in the United States, the largest manufacturer of MEAs. And recently, over the past year, we bought the first private company that ever built a liquid hydrogen plant of scale, United Hydrogen, and coupled that with another purchase by an electrolyzer company called Giner EOX, which is known to have the leading PEM stack technology in the world. Plug, just to give you a feel, did in the fuel cell and hydrogen space over $240 million last year. And in this coming year, we're going to do $475 million in revenue. We are, without question, the innovators in this space. And this capability has allowed us to move into other areas, on-road vehicles, as well as large-scale stationary products. I think the thing that excites me the most is Plug is building the first green hydrogen network across the United States, using the capabilities we have in electrolyzers, as well as building liquid hydrogen plants. We've set out a goal that will generate over 500 tons per day of liquid hydrogen by 2025. And globally, and this is all going to be green, we've made a commitment that the future is green, not because of us, because we talk to people like Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, who tell us that to meet their net zero goals, they need green hydrogen. We'll be doing over 1,000 tons by 2028. For example, we have a partnership in Spain with Acciona. I just wanted to let you know that hydrogen, and I think many folks know, can help reduce the carbon footprint by 6 gigatons by 2050. It's not just all in transportation. You can see transportation is only half the issue. Lots of opportunities in industrial energy, such as steel manufacturing, building heating. We're working with many companies with putting hydrogen into their natural gas pipeline. I did want to just stop and talk about Plug is, and I think it started out by talking about the world is how you build partnerships. By the end of the second quarter, we'll announce a JV with Renault, where Plug Power and Renault will be putting fuel cell light commercial vehicles on the road in the coming year. Actually, we're looking to do 10 pilot sites in 2022. Now, this joint venture will be based in France. It has a goal that by 2030, we'll have over 30% of the fuel cell electric vehicle market in Europe. Now, and this, like our business and material handling, we not only will be selling vehicles, we'll be selling the hydrogen infrastructure, as well as the ability to generate green hydrogen. And we haven't forgotten Korea. I think many folks in this seminar know that Korea has ambitious targets by 2040. SK, the second largest conglomerate in Korea, invested $1.6 billion in the Plug Power in February. And we're looking to not only do fuel cell systems, but fueling infrastructure, our electrolyzers, and our large-scale stationary products. We're looking to deploy in Korea by 2025 with SK over 400 megawatts of stationary products. You got to have a place to build it. And we're building a gigafactory located in Rochester, New York, actually where Kodak is. And a lot of the technology, interesting enough, to make MEAs is very similar to the capability that that existed at Kodak years ago. We'll be putting out over 1.5 gigawatts of output next year out of this facility, making 7 million MEAs, stamping our own plates, building electrolyzer products. So as you can see, this gigafactory actually has 256 pieces of unique equipment, which we're planning to duplicate with SK in South Korea. So the Plug story, this is the company that established the first market in the hydrogen industry. We're going to be a major player. We've been driving the green hydrogen economy. As you heard, we're deeply involved in on-road vehicles and large-scale stationary. We're expanding our geographical footprint with partners like SK and Renault. And look, we have over $5 billion on our balance sheet at the end of the first quarter. So we're well positioned to meet our ambitions. So that's the Plug story.
Thank you very much. Oh, very aggressive and impressive. Your company is already famous here in Korea. Yes, that is correct. I'd like to ask one question. It's an obvious question, but can you explain to us how hydrogen will contribute to the global carbon neutrality?
So when you look at, with folks like Total, Plug Power's members of the Hydrogen Council, which is a global organization of over 80 countries. The council and company believe 18% of world's energy will come from hydrogen by 2050. There's many applications where batteries aren't the solution, where solar is not the solution, but there's many applications where they are. So if you think, for example, let me point out a couple, large heavy-duty vehicles, where because of the energy density advantage of fuel cells, as well as the lighter weight, fuel cells have unique advantages. I think when you also look at opportunities such as industrial heating and steel manufacturing, batteries and electricity don't have the heat content required for those processes. And that's why we believe that by 2050, 6 gigatons of CO2 will be removed by moving to hydrogen in the future.
Thank you very much. Because of a time constraint, we'll move on. Let's go to Mr. Sam Kimmins. Would you make your speech for us?
Thank you very much. So I'll just quickly share my screen. I hope you can see that. So my name's Sam Kimmins. I'm the head of RE100 with the Climate Group. RE100 brings together currently 311 of the world's largest companies committed to 100% renewable electricity for their global operations. This is the latest side of our membership. We're going to need a new way of showing this shortly because we're running out of space on the slide and we can't get the logos any smaller. But to give an idea of the scale of RE100, together our members' electricity demand exceeds that of Italy. So over 300 terawatt hours per year, that's around 2/3 the annual electricity demand of South Korea. So, and these companies are putting their money where their mouths are. IKEA, I found a member, famously owns more wind turbines than they do stores. And in fact, 10% of new renewable additions last year were through corporate power purchase agreements. So this is having a real tangible impact on markets. So why are companies doing this? Well, they're stepping up to RE100 because they know that their future competitiveness is dependent on being able to use cheap, clean power. And this is a really positive message for supply companies who are either shifting to or are based on producing electricity using renewables. It's obviously a less positive message for energy suppliers based on coal and gas. These companies, these huge customers are saying, we don't want your product. So RE100 is growing by around 70 companies a year, and that growth is accelerating. And those companies are making active decisions about where they invest, where they actually source in their supply chains, based on whether they're able to use renewables in those geographies. If it's not possible to buy renewables in a country, they are actually making active choices about their location. A number of our companies, including Apple, Google, and Microsoft and others, are also making active choices in their supply chains. 100 Apple suppliers have now committed to using 100% renewables for Apple products. We're seeing similar trends amongst many of our members. And this is having potentially huge implications for Asia Pacific economies, which are largely based on supply to the rest of the world. And the president of the Taiwanese authorities, President Tsai Ing-wen, in her 2019 keynote policy address, stated that the ability for companies to achieve RE100 is critical to Taiwan's industrial policy. This trend is also being noted in Taiwan, and we're delighted that a number of companies, including several members of the SK Group, plus K-Water, LG Energy Solution, and more, have joined us in RE100, despite it being almost impossible to buy renewable electricity at scale in Korea. Indeed, these companies are joining us because it is almost impossible to buy renewable electricity in Korea. Similarly, 54 Japanese companies have joined RE100. These companies are sending a very strong signal to the market that they need things to change. They need the policies put in place that will enable them to buy renewable electricity in order that they can compete, not only securing cheap, clean, renewable electricity, but also competing in the marketplace for custom from these large buyers like Apple, Google, BT, etc., etc. I'm delighted to say that the Korean government is responding, the Japanese government also, and the Taiwanese government are responding with policies that are opening up for competition in the marketplace to now allow renewables to compete on a level playing field with fossil fuels. There's not enough time in this presentation to go into the details of those measures, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the progress that's being made. So I shall leave you with Alok Sharma's call to action for COP for more companies to join RE100 and send this strong market signal. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope that we have more companies joining RE100, as you mentioned. I have questions for you. The first question I have for you is, still it's not that easy to participate in RE100, but a lot of leading companies, they're doing it. I think you mentioned about the reasons, but what is the most important basic reason that they like to decide to join in RE100?
When we set up the campaign in 2014, the most important reason was corporate social responsibility and emissions, reducing emissions. And it was very much considered the right thing to do. And this, our founder members, IKEA and Swiss Re, it was very much this is something we should be doing. Now companies are telling us two key reasons why they're joining. First of all, is because in many markets, renewable electricity is the cheapest form of electricity. The IEA recently declared that solar is the cheapest form of electricity in history. So there is an obvious commercial imperative to be ahead of the game in being able to buy renewable electricity and engage in the kind of deals worldwide that requires. The second growing reason is because the top of the supply chain is demanding that companies go renewable. It's the easiest way, it's the best way for companies like Unilever, Apple, etc., to be able to green their supply chain, because not only does it reduce CO2 emissions, it saves money. And so they're asking their suppliers to go renewable. And their suppliers, in turn, are asking their governments to enable renewables to compete in a level playing field, in order that they can get renewables in Korea or Japan at the same price as they can get them, often using Korean and Japanese made equipment, in Europe and the US.
Thank you. And what we should do more to promote RE100 for the global companies and companies like in Korea, Japan, in Asia? Do you have any suggestions on those?
I think there have been some real hero companies who have put their head above the parapet in Asia Pacific. Ricoh, our first Japanese member, SK Hynix, and 5 other members of the SK group, our first Korean members. They've taken a big risk by saying, look, we're going to tackle this. We're going to commit to 100% renewable to send a signal to the government. What's needed now, and what is happening, is for those governments to respond by saying, okay, we recognize this huge demand. We recognize the competitive imperative to allow renewables to compete. And so what's needed now is for those governments to really accelerate action to allow power purchase agreements, to provide good tracking of renewable electricity, and to reduce tariffs and other barriers to renewables.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next speaker. And Kiminami-san, would you please make your speech for us?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Yeah. This is Yosuke Kiminami of Renova, a renewable energy IPP company. Yes, next page. Let me introduce the activity of Renova. Renova is a research company specialized in development and operation of renewable energies, such as solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, and small hydro. Renova was founded in Tokyo in 2000 and has made continuous growth. Now we have more than 200 colleagues working together for the benefit of Earth and the community. Here is our mission, to create green and sustainable energy systems for a better world, with a vision to become Asia's renewable energy leader. We are actively developing and operating 26 projects around Asia and Japan. And we have made active investments in renewables projects, which accumulates $4 billion to date. Total capacity of the projects already announced are 1.8 gigawatts, including operating, construction, and development projects. We are aiming for the growth by actively developing projects in growing sectors, such as offshore wind in Japan and other Asian markets. Our target is to have 3 gigawatts total capacity in mid-term, and even larger for the long term. There are a lot of renewable measures coming out of Europe. I believe that there should be new renewable measures from Asia, and Renova is aiming to become one. Renewable energy project is dependent on natural resources in each area. So we believe mutual success with the local community is a key for success, and our raison d'etre. We always to understand the local community deeply and bring additional values on top of renewable energy. From our experience, local community is not only looking for green energy. There are a variety of needs, such as promotion of fishery and improving local employment of tourists, improvement involvement in maintenance works, etc. A renewable project is often just a trigger to enrich the region. Important thing is to commit to local community for long term through establishing mechanisms to create new industries and social communication. And now we are expanding our business in Asia with the same philosophy. Now, we have 3 subsidiaries in Singapore, Korea, and Vietnam. We are developing projects in collaboration of local members who knows the market deeply, local partners who shares our philosophy and goal, and professional teams from the head office. Let me introduce our project in Vietnam as one example of our activity in Asia. We participated in one of the largest onshore wind projects with a local capacity, with a total capacity of 144 megawatts in May 2020. This project is led by PCC1, our partner, and we are contributing our engineering and financing capabilities. Project construction is going well, targeting completion with this October. And here, I will talk about Yuri Honjo offshore wind project in Akita, Japan. This is one of the largest offshore wind projects in Japan. Total capacity of 700 megawatts and the bidding process. We are fully supported by fishery associations and the local authorities as a result of our effort to reach mutual success and creating additional value, as discussed earlier. This is a picture of a calligraphy work done by one of the local fishermen in Yuri Honjo, showing our mutual success philosophy. This is our treasure, and we displayed it in our office. Offshore wind project is very complicated and large, involve a lot of technical considerations. Renova is building up a full-fledged engineering team capable to lead and manage the major technical issues in-house. The last topic of my presentation, I would like to talk about Chodo offshore wind project in Korea. This is the first time to talk about this project in public. Together with our partner from Korea, our Korean office members has been playing key role developing this project. We value a long-term partnership with the local stakeholders. We got consent from local community from the project. We got 1 year wind data and have submitted application for energy business license this January. We have plans to expand the project to up to 1 gigawatt. We'd like to further contribute to a greener planet and the local community. I'm looking forward to the exciting discussion with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is very impressive that you create the most successful renewable energy company in Japan. One question I have for you is, so what is the major hurdle or obstacle that you had in developing renewable energy business?
Thank you for your very important question. As a high-level view from renewable industry, I think there are 5 key points. One is a vision for long term. 2, technology innovation. 3, funding. 4, infrastructure. And 5, human resources. And as for the first 3 points, vision, technology innovation, and funding, market is making great progress, and it seems it is getting resolved or on track. But on the infrastructure, such as grid system and the port for offshore wind, improvement and upgrade is needed. Last point on human resources, especially in Asian markets, we need more and more talent to join this sector and also surrounding industries. And as a practical matter, at a business level developing renewable energy, I see two major hurdles that need to be overcome in Asia. First one is a public acceptance of renewable energy, public acceptance. In many markets and projects, consents from the local residents are becoming issues. So it is critical for developers to suggest mutual success and sustainable partnership to the local communities, which is always Renova's highest priority. Secondly, the transmission line upgrade is becoming a hurdle for governments with aggressive target for renewables. To resolve this issue, both government and developers need to sit together to come up with plans for grid upgrade. Grid upgrade plan needs to be set based on a realistic projection of renewables installation and prepared well in advance.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question for you. How do you feel about 46% reduction target of Japan? Do you think you can achieve that one?
Okay, thank you for your timely question. Yeah, the new target of Japan, 46% reduction by 2030, is a big jump from prior target of 26%. I think the target is aggressive, but probably achievable. All industries have to work hard to reach this target, and the renewables has to play a key role. And especially Japanese government has set the target to install maximum 45 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2040. And they introduced a new legislation for accelerating development and improved the port. We believe our recent run, we made during development of our Akita project will contribute to this target as a developer. We know what kind of concerns the local residents might have, or we have been addressing it one by one. To add at the end, in Japan, we guess floating offshore technology is essential to achieve this target. We expect half of 45 gigawatt target will be floating. We need to accelerate the development of this kind of technology.
Thank you very much. After very good discussions on industry, innovations, and transformation, now let's move on to policy, the government sector. Mr. Thomas Anker Christensen, would you please make your speech for us?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim, and hello to everyone. It's been very interesting to listen to the interventions from industry, and in a way, I would say that Denmark, in many ways, tries to be that most ambitious and most aggressive renewable energy country that can provide those frameworks and those the market that you all have been talking about. We have, during the lockdown, set ourselves the target of an emission reduction of 70% in 2030, with, of course, a view to climate neutrality in 2050. And we are working very hard on the 70% target. Just today in Parliament, they're negotiating on setting a 50% reduction target for 2025, that is in 3.5 years. And in the political negotiation and the policy framework of Denmark, that is being done by targeted negotiations track by track. So we have an energy track, industry, transport, circular economy and waste, agriculture, of course, and even taxation. And in each of these tracks, they're trying to make the policy changes, the regulatory changes that not only make it possible to achieve the target, but also make it good business to do so. And this is being done in close collaboration between the public and private sector. There are 13 public-private partnerships for each of the major strands of private sector, where the main players in each sector come together, whether it's energy or it's cement or it's shipping, and in a way also trying to make sure that we get the integration of the green energy generation, the transformation into hydrogen, and the uptake into the hard-to-abate sectors on the industry side, whether it's cement or shipping or trucking or aviation, that we get that value chain integrated in our planning. As part of the government decision is the very ambitious push for new construction of offshore wind with 10 gigawatt. Now, compared to the Japanese target of 45 gigawatt, that maybe not sound as much, but we're a small country with 6 million inhabitants. So 10 giga, that's for 10 million households. And that means we will have energy enough to export to our neighbors, but also when we are at peak capacity, we will have during the rest of the day excess energy to produce green hydrogen. And in a way, I think that's one of the outstanding questions in the hydrogen equation. It's the cost of the energy that goes into the production, but we're trying to solve that by having above peak capacity on green energy. So we are trying to think through the whole value chain domestically, but then also to create a good platform for Danish companies to be working with you in Korea, with Japan, in the US, on rolling out these technologies at scale. So we're trying to think it through both domestically and globally, of course, being a small country, but one that's moving very aggressively in this space.
Thank you. Your country has been a role model in terms of energy transformation for many countries here. I have one question. You mentioned about private-public sector partnership. What did you do in terms of promoting private-public partnership better? Would you elaborate that aspect to us?
Sure. I mean, the government basically invited the main federations of Danish industry, Danish energy, food and land use, into identifying what would be the best work streams for bringing in the private sector. And then they identified these 13 main sectors, and then they asked the industry itself to organize in those, working with their main associations and also with experts in how you could drive the 70% reduction target through each sector. And they each came up with a roadmap and in a way offered what they could do under existing regulatory conditions, with improved regulatory conditions, with existing financing, with public financing, and with private financing, in a way showing the different options and opportunities. And in that overall framing, they also took into account the transition of workers, the job creation dimension. Just to give you one figure, for every gigawatt of offshore wind we count that it creates about 14,000 to 15,000 jobs. So there's a net job increase by actually moving into offshore wind. And of course also the health dimension for public health and public safety, there's also a dimension there. So overall, we try to take a very much whole of government, whole of industry approach to the way we go about it.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to another very important subject of today, the global cooperation and also inclusive green growth. I'd like to ask Ms. Hong Patterson to make a speech for us.
Thank you, and I'd like to echo some of the comments before. Thank you for inviting us to join such an important topic, and it's so encouraging to hear the other interventions. The energy sector is one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, given the world's reliance on fossil fuels. At the same time, over 500 million people still lack access to electricity, and a third of the world's population lacks access to clean energy sources for cooking. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, renewable energy must supply about 70 to 85% of all electricity by 2050 for the world to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement and limit warming well below the 2 degrees. Investments in renewable energy must also increase energy access to underserved people, creates jobs, and bolsters economic growth. Developing countries have a unique opportunity to leapfrog from traditional fossil fuel sources straight to low emission energy generation from renewable sources, which are now cheaper than new fossil fuel power in many parts of the world. However, despite increasingly competitive costs for renewable energy technologies, policy, regulatory, and institutional barriers coupled with a lack of depth in local capital markets in developing countries prevent the mobilization of investments at scale and at competitive rates. The World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report in 2021 assessed the top global risks by likelihood. It highlighted 4 environmental factors. Listed second after extreme weather events is the failure of governments and businesses to enforce, enact, or invest in effective climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, preserve ecosystems, protect populations, and transition to a carbon neutral economy. Climate change is running much faster than we are. We need to be much more ambitious and with urgency. Leaders today looking to revive economies are faced with decisions that either entrench our dependency on fossil fuels or put us on a path to achieve the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. Action is needed to address these barriers in order to attract global financial flows and crowd in private investments to shift to renewable energy-based power systems and meet national climate, economic, and social goals. The Green Climate Fund, as I had mentioned earlier, is the world's largest climate-focused fund, helping developing countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and enhance their ability to respond to climate change in line with the Paris Agreement. We do this across 4 transition areas: the built environment, human security, livelihoods, and well-being, land use, forest and ecosystems, and the topic at hand, which is energy and industry. GCF is in a unique position whereby we're able to participate across the value chain. So in the front end and anchored in our core principle of country ownership, GCF supports countries through its readiness programs by providing grants to help countries develop bankable investment plans based on their NDCs, and includes the development of long-term clean energy planning and budgeting that integrates climate externalities and socioeconomic co-benefits, and catalyzing climate innovation through innovative business models and employing high-impact innovative technologies. Subsequently, at the programming stage, GCF can mobilize funds at scale through de-risking investments and thereby unlocking local capital. Unlike most institutions, we are able to deploy a full range of financing instruments, which includes grants, loans, guarantees, and equity investments to help meet country-specific needs and reduce risks for investors. By using these instruments and through risk sequencing, GCF is able to mobilize capital at scale for investments where risk may otherwise be considered too high. And I think we heard this in some of the other interventions previously. This accelerates the transition to renewable energy, as well as providing energy access and affordability for millions of people, including marginalized groups. And then finally, at the tail end of the value chain, lessons learned from our portfolio allows us to share knowledge of successful innovations, scalable mobilization efforts, and developing climate expertise of financial institutions to replicate them. And this can include enabling the adoption of best practices in grid capacity, storage, and flexibility for higher penetration renewable energy, increasing the national and subnational energy service buyers' green procurement capacity, and strengthening the scientific verification of causality between access to electricity and the increased climate resilience. Partnerships have formed the basis of GCF's business model, so it's really encouraging to hear some of this echoed in the other interventions as well. But it's been the basis of GCF's business model since it was established. Leveraging existing sectoral initiatives, coalitions, and platforms when planning interventions are critical to creating multiplier effects and promoting joint learning and knowledge transfer in the renewable energy sector. So it's with these partnerships that we will have a chance of achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw that you are very good at the numbers. And you are the CFO of GCF. Very good. I have a question for you. You mentioned about partnerships and alliances. It is very important in achieving climate neutrality. And would you explain to us how GCF is supporting those partnerships and alliances?
Thank you. Well, as I mentioned before, energy sector decarbonization holds the key for meeting the goals of maintaining climate change to below the 2 degrees. And financing needs for this are beyond any one single firm or public body alone. There's still a significant number of people who are still without basic energy services. So it's about 650 million who don't have access to electricity, about 2.3 billion people without access to clean and modern cooking fuel. Significant financing is needed for transitioning out of existing centralized and fossil fuel-based energy systems while scaling up on low emissions climate resilient energy systems. But at the same time, there's also significant financing needs for new grid infrastructure and new rules of power and energy markets. So partnerships and alliances are therefore critical for efficiency and effectiveness of capital investments and to shape the new market rules as governance of international financial systems that can integrate climate needs. And they're also, as I mentioned earlier, central to GCF's business model. We work with over 200 national and international partners to enable and foster alliances and business models that can help scale climate finance for energy transition. I think I wanted to share maybe one example of a line of credit that we provided for solar rooftop segment in the commercial, industrial, and residential housing sectors. The goal of the program was to enable access to long-term affordable finance for solar rooftop installation projects in India, including vulnerable communities. The program provides access to long-term and affordable financing for the construction of 250 megawatts of rooftop solar capacity in India, and thereby reducing emissions by about 5.2 million tons of CO2 equivalent over 20 years or so. This pioneering private sector driven initiative unlocks private sector investments in the rooftop solar market and also paves the way to a sustainable bankable model in India. And we feel it could be used as a template for programs in other countries. But going back to your original question, how did we do this? This program was developed with the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development as the accredited entity. Tata Clean Tech Capital, the Indian private sector, alongside IFC Investment, which is the private sector of the World Bank, and then providing lending to local SMEs. And we had strong engagement with CSOs and with the local communities.
Thank you very much. I think you explained very well the role of climate finance to us. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to next speaker, Ms. Seung-eun Jang. And we'll hear about inclusive green growth from her. Ms. Jang, would you please?
Hello, everyone. This is Jang Seung-eun, the founder of Yoke. It's my pleasure to be part of this P4G Summit here today. President Moon Jae-in's remark about the need for every nation to come together to address poverty and inequality in developing countries, as well as the possibility of combating global climate change through these efforts, demonstrates that environmental issues are a global problem that transcend the national borders. One such example is the use of kerosene. 1.3 billion people use kerosene due to the lack of electrification. Even though majority of them are living in sub-Saharan Africa, this is a problem that affects to everyone since it causes severe carbon emissions and air pollution. So to address this issue, you come up with a solution called solar cow. Let's take a look.
Batteries, my friends go to school where the solar cow waits for them. They plug their batteries into the solar cow. While they wait for the solar cow to charge the batteries, they can take classes and also have fun with their friends. After school, they can go home with fully charged batteries to power lights and cell phones. Thanks to solar cow, the house is now bright at night. Also, they no longer need to go to charging shops far from home. The solar milk batteries provide incentive for parents to send their kids to school. So my friends and their parents can all be happy.
It's an innovative approach that tackles the two problems at the same time. The child labor and energy distribution has been recognized in several international platforms. Through the P4G project, we work in Kenya with Energy for Impact, an NGO that specialized in energy. We wanted to test the business model by collecting the user fees. So we implement the two solar cows in Umchinjirini and Umtimbuani. So these two schools were very different, has a very different criteria. But unfortunately, not long after starting the project, the COVID-19 occurred and posing us a substantial challenge for the project operation. But through this experience, we found out there's some possibility that we can operate this program commercially. And a new opportunity arose when we learned that insufficient electrification was an obstacle for international organizations in remote learning through the radios during the COVID-19. So Yoke immediately developed a new solution, new solar cow with the radio features, and provide the means to encourage remote learning as well as distribute the energy. We work with the KOICA for this site, Zanzibar. And furthermore, in the case of limited mobility, we plan to ensure that families can still be supplied with energy through the individual solar panels without sending their kids to school, as long as they allow and encourage their children to listen to the educational contents through this solar milk, the radio. So it can, become a very important devices that can sustain the education even in, a prolonged pandemic. And we also, with the citizens, we run a crowdfunding campaign in United States, and you can see that we have a very successful campaign, and it shows the participation of the citizens can be very powerful. And I'm glad to share news that we just launched a crowdfunding in Korea, and we are eager to meet Korean backers. One innovative solution might not be able to change the whole world. But when we all realize that this global issue is our own problem and act together, I believe that we can make a change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is actually very brave effort that you're making here. Question I have for you is, in promoting your business in developing countries, what are the difficulties that you are facing? And what kind of assistance that you like to have in the future?
Yeah, I think we've spent a lot of time and effort for, receiving the permission from the Ministry of Education in Kenya and Tanzania. So that I think if we can, get the government to level of the cooperation, then it will be, tremendous help, especially when you scale up the project and implement it hundreds and thousands of the solar cow. And yeah, I think that'll be really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your sincere effort. I think we heard from all 7 highly respectable global leaders how we can work together to achieve global carbon neutrality better. I sincerely hope that you learned a lot today. Personally, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of lessons. I think I got a lot of advices. And I think I saw some hope here. And as you know, to achieve global carbon neutrality will be a very difficult journey for all of us. We will have a lot of issues to resolve. But I see that we can get together, we can brainstorm together, and we can figure out and we can help each other how we can make the progress together. I think we have a great future and hope here. I hope that we can continue to brainstorm on this. This is the first step, but I hope that we can continue those efforts together. So let's work together to achieve the global carbon neutrality together. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, once again. And that wraps up the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Thematic Session on Energy. We thank all the panelists, participants, and viewers around the world that have watched the session online. I'm Jiyeon Kim in Seoul. Thank you for investing your time with us. Goodbye for now.